Most men think red flags are obvious. Loud, dramatic, easy to spot, but real life doesn't work like that. Some of the most dangerous signals in relationships don't look bad at all. They look good. They look attractive. They look exciting. In fact, many of them look exactly like green flags. That's why so many men walk straight into situations that slowly drain their time, energy, and self-respect. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Some red flags that look like green flags are the ones that cause the most damage later. And once a man learns to recognize these red flags that look like green flags, he starts seeing relationships very differently. If you're a man who wants to understand female psychology, avoid costly mistakes, and develop real awareness in modern dating, make sure to subscribe to the channel now. This channel is dedicated to helping men think clearly about relationships and life, and right now we're pushing toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, so your support really makes a difference. Topic 1. She moves too fast emotionally. Many men have experienced a situation that at first felt like something straight out of a romantic movie. Within just a few days, the connection feels intense, almost magical. She says things like, "I've never met someone like you before," or "I feel like I've known you forever." For a man who's used to shallow dates or surface-level conversations, this can feel rare. It's almost too special to question. And that's exactly when many men start believing they've found something unique. But sometimes, what feels like destiny is actually emotional speed disguised as passion. When a relationship moves too fast, the male brain often interprets it as proof of compatibility. After all, who wouldn't want to feel like they've met someone who truly understands them? But relationship psychology shows something interesting. Healthy connections usually grow over time. They don't explode overnight. When someone creates deep emotional intimacy right away, talking about the future, exclusivity, or strong feelings, it may not be love. It could be intense loneliness, a need for validation, or even a pattern known as love bombing, where overwhelming early affection creates a strong emotional attachment very quickly. Imagine a man who just started dating someone, and within 2 weeks, she's already talking about taking trips together, meeting family, or how the two of them seem made for each other. At first, it can feel flattering. But a more experienced man tends to notice something important. Healthy relationships have a rhythm. They allow trust, attraction, and respect to grow naturally. When everything happens too quickly, sometimes it's not because the connection is deep. It's because someone is trying to speed up the story before certain truths start to surface. And interestingly enough, this is only the first sign many men mistake for a green flag, because the next one tends to be even more subtle. Topic 2, she says, "You're not like other men." Few phrases have as powerful an effect on a man's mind as this one. "You're not like other men." The moment he hears it, something shifts inside him. It sounds like a simple compliment, almost innocent. But in practice, that phrase creates a sense of distinction. Suddenly, he's not just another guy she's dated. He's different, special, the kind of man she's never met before. And without even realizing it, many men start investing more and more energy into the relationship just to keep that title. What most men don't notice is that this phrase can work like a subtle psychological trap. Because when someone tells you that you're different from everyone else, a silent expectation is born. You now have to keep proving it. The man begins to think twice before disagreeing, before setting boundaries, before acting completely like himself. After all, he doesn't want to risk being placed in the same category as the other men. And slowly, almost without noticing, he starts shaping his behavior to preserve that special image. More experienced men tend to notice something interesting in situations like this. Many times, the same woman who says you're not like other men has said that exact same thing to someone else before. Not necessarily because she's lying, but because that phrase creates emotional closeness very quickly. It makes the man feel like there's a unique connection between them. And when that feeling appears too early, an attentive man starts asking a quiet question in his mind. Is this genuine admiration, or just another subtle way to fast-track emotional bonding? Because the next sign often looks even more positive on the surface, but it can reveal much more about what's really going on underneath. Topic 3. She shares her trauma very early. There's a curious moment that often happens in modern dating. The conversation starts light, hobbies, work, music, maybe a joke here and there. But suddenly, without much warning, she begins talking about past relationships that went terribly wrong. Stories about toxic ex-boyfriends, betrayal, manipulation, or painful experiences. Many men interpret this as a sign of trust. After all, opening up about something personal isn't easy. And when someone shares something that vulnerable early on, it can feel like a special emotional connection is being built. But more attentive men notice something important. Real vulnerability usually takes time. When someone reveals deep emotional wounds very early, it's not always just honesty. Sometimes it's an unconscious way to create emotional bonding quickly. That's because stories of pain trigger something powerful in the male instinct, the desire to protect, help, or even rescue. And without realizing it, the man starts stepping into an emotional role in the dynamic. Even though the relationship is still in its early stages, a common example happens when, on the second or third date, she explains that all her previous relationships ended because the men were manipulative or emotionally unavailable. Naturally, the man thinks, well, I'm not like that. And then he begins trying even harder to prove that he's different. The problem is that when this dynamic begins too early, the relationship can slowly turn into a mission instead of a balanced connection. And interestingly, many men only realize this much later, especially when another behavior appears that seems extremely positive at first, but may hide something completely different. Topic 4. She says, I hate drama. There's a phrase that shows up a lot in modern dating. I hate drama. At first glance, it sounds like the perfect green flag. After all, who wants to live surrounded by unnecessary conflict, constant arguments, or emotional games? For many men, hearing this early in a relationship brings a sense of relief. It feels like they've finally met someone calm, mature, and emotionally stable, someone who wants peace, simplicity, and an adult relationship. But more experienced men often notice something curious about this phrase. People who are truly calm rarely need to announce that they hate drama. They simply live that way. When someone feels the need to emphasize it right from the start, sometimes there's another reason behind it. It can be a way of setting the stage before any conflict even happens. And ironically, in many cases, the person who talks the most about hating drama ends up creating emotional storms when things don't go exactly the way they expected. Imagine a common scenario. Everything is going well until a small disagreement appears. Something simple like weekend plans or replying to a message a little later than usual. Suddenly, the person who hates drama reacts in an exaggerated way, turning a small issue into a bigger conflict or creating unexpected emotional tension. The man feels confused because it doesn't match the calm image she presented at the beginning. That's when many men start realizing that some green flags are more about image than behavior. And interestingly, the next sign often looks even more positive, especially for men who value attention and closeness. Topic 5. She wants to spend all her time with you at the beginning of a relationship. Constant attention can feel amazing. She wants to see you all the time, sends messages throughout the day, asks where you are, how work went, what you're doing right now. For many men, this feels like clear proof of genuine interest. After all, they've often heard that when a woman truly likes you, she shows it. So when someone appears wanting to spend every possible moment with you, it can feel like confirmation that the connection is real. But more experienced men learn something important over time. Healthy interest still respects space. When someone wants to be present in every single moment of your life right from the beginning, sometimes it's not closeness, it's emotional dependence disguised as affection. Slowly, small things begin to happen. She gets uncomfortable when you go out with friends. She asks why it took you longer to reply to a message. Or she makes subtle comments like, I just thought you'd want to spend time with me instead. And without realizing it, the man starts adjusting his routine to avoid those small tensions. This kind of dynamic can begin very subtly. A man cancels a workout at the gym to see her. Later, he postpones plans with friends because she seemed a little upset. Little by little, his life begins revolving more around the relationship than around himself. At first, it looks like dedication, but over time it can turn into something that limits his freedom and independence. And interestingly, many men only notice this pattern after hearing another phrase that sounds extremely positive, something that appears to signal maturity and honesty, but can actually reveal a very different kind of warning sign. Topic 6. She says, I'm just very honest. There's a phrase that, at first glance, sounds like emotional maturity. I'm just very honest. Many men even appreciate hearing this early on. After all, honesty seems rare in modern dating. Someone who says exactly what they think, doesn't play mind games, and prefers direct truth over subtle hints. Sounds like a healthy thing. And for a while, the man believes he's finally met someone who values clear communication. But there's a huge difference between honesty and emotional harshness. Men who've been through a few relationships tend to recognize this over time, because often that honesty comes together with constant criticism, unnecessary comments, or subtle forms of disrespect. Phrases like, "I'm just being honest," start showing up right after something clearly hurtful or dismissive. And suddenly, any negative reaction from the man is treated as if he's just being overly sensitive. A simple example happens when she makes comments about his appearance, money, or personal decisions, and then justifies it by saying she simply values truth. The problem is that healthy honesty also includes empathy. Emotionally mature people know when to speak, how to speak, and when silence is more respectful. When someone uses honesty as a shield for constant criticism, the relationship slowly starts losing its sense of ease. And interestingly, some men keep ignoring these signs, especially when there's another trait that seems almost too perfect to be real. Topic 7. She seems too perfect at the beginning. Everything seems to fit perfectly. She likes the same music, the same movies, the same activities. She laughs at the same jokes, agrees with almost every opinion, and seems to admire exactly the same things you value. For many men, this feels like a modern miracle. Finally meeting someone with natural compatibility, something rare. Almost as if the universe decided to align to people perfectly on the same path. But more observant men start noticing something curious when this happens too early. Real people have differences. They disagree sometimes. They have their own tastes, opinions, and habits that don't always match perfectly. When someone seems to align with everything you like, there's a possibility of something called psychological mirroring. This happens when a person, sometimes unconsciously, adjusts their responses, interests, and behavior to create a strong sense of connection. Imagine a man casually mentioning that he enjoys hiking in nature. Suddenly, she loves hiking too. He mentions a specific kind of movie. And interestingly enough, that's one of her favorites as well. At first, it feels incredible. But over time, some men start realizing they know a lot about themselves in the conversation, and almost nothing about who she actually is. And it's within this kind of dynamic that one of the most revealing signs tends to appear, something many men hear without realizing what it might truly mean. Topic 8. She says all her exes were toxic. Almost everyone has a complicated story when it comes to past relationships. So at first, when a woman says she's had bad experiences, many men understand. She explains that her ex-boyfriends were manipulative, immature, emotionally unavailable, or simply difficult people. The man listens and thinks something very common. Well, not like that. And without realizing it, he starts feeling like maybe he's exactly the kind of man who will finally treat her the right way. The problem appears when that story keeps repeating itself. It wasn't just one difficult ex, or two. Suddenly, every man from her past seems to have been toxic, abusive, or deeply problematic. More experienced men learn something important over time. When every story has the exact same villain, it's worth paying closer attention. Yes. Relationships are dynamics between two people, and rarely is only one person responsible for everything that went wrong. That doesn't mean someone can't have genuinely gone through bad relationships. Of course they can. But attentive men tend to ask a quiet question when they hear this pattern. If every single one of them was the problem, what exactly happened in each story? Often, time reveals that the narrative was only part of the reality, and when a man starts observing these details more clearly, he begins to understand something essential about healthy relationships, something many men only learn after ignoring several warning signs that looked like green flags in the beginning. Conclusion. The truth is, most men don't lose in relationships because they ignored obvious red flags. They lose because they misunderstood the subtle ones. The red flags that look like green flags. The behaviors that seem flattering at first, exciting in the beginning, and harmless in the moment. Yes. But awareness changes everything. Once a man learns to recognize these patterns, he stops chasing intensity and starts valuing clarity, respect, and emotional stability. So here's a question worth thinking about. How many of these red flags that look like green flags have you seen before? but didn't recognize at the time. Let me know in the comments. Your experience might help another man avoid the same mistake. And if you want to keep learning about psychology, relationships, and the mindset that helps men make better decisions, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're building a community focused on growth, awareness, and real conversations. And we're also pushing toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, so your support helps this message reach more men who need it.